Hi, I'm Vicki Papageorgopoulos from Headspace Camperdown. Before I start today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, pay respects to elders past and present, and to any Aboriginal people here today. I'd also like to acknowledge any carers here today, or any parents or any people with a lived experience of mental health or any kind of disabilities, and thank you for being here today. I'm from Headspace Camperdown, talking about, I guess, mental health issues, and also we'll give you some tips around mental health and well-being for young people as we go on. I'm specifically from Camperdown and Campbelltown, but there are close to 100 headspaces all over Australia, and they all operate a little bit differently, but similar, care around early intervention prevention with mental health care issues. So I can speak to the Campbelltown and Camperdown services, but another one closer to you might provide services a little bit differently. If you have any questions as well, put up your hand as well. I'm happy to answer them. So our Headspace site is located in the Brain and Mind Centre at Sydney University. And we focus a lot on early intervention and prevention. So that's our specialty, like getting to young people as soon as something's coming up for them so we can get them back on track. We don't want that mental health issue taking things over and starting to affect schooling or work or relationships. So we try and get in there early. Where Headspace operates working with young people aged between 12 and 25, and we're low cost or bulk billing service, but no young person gets turned away for lack of funds. We are federally funded for, I guess, the skeleton of the service, and then private clinicians come in and provide, the mental health care kind of counselling, one-on-one stuff, but we'll talk a bit about that further. So currently with us, we've got psychiatrists, psychologists, occupational therapists. The occupational therapists are doing really great stuff around functional recovery. So if a young person has, severe phobias about, going to parties or eating in a restaurant or going to a cafe, our wonderful occupational therapists will formulate a program where they will slowly start assisting that young person to get out again into the public, and we're lucky to have this functional recovery service within ours, because you can only do so much in the room with the psychologist where they're telling them to do all these exercises at home to improve their anxiety or depression, but these occupational therapists come into it, and that young person may not have a parent or carer available or able to assist them with this stuff, so it's good to have the occupational therapist do something that we might see as an easy thing, like sitting in a cafe and having a coffee in a crowded place, but for some of these young people that could be really terrifying. So it's really great we have this program where we can assist young people with whatever their plan is, customised to them, whether it be them being scared of getting public transport, for example, or ordering food, or doing any of those things, and we'll customise a program for young people that fit into that. We've got GPs on site as well that assist young people with all the physical health stuff, because young people are coming to us with mental health concerns, but at the same time, there's also physical health stuff happening. Like there are young people that are, maybe having issues around eating or, nutrition, or might have diabetes or other physical health concerns happening that we can assist with. Mental health nurses provide therapy as well. So we've got a whole, variety of clinicians working in one team. So a young person could come to our service and have maybe 3 clinicians wrapped around them, making sure that they're getting the right amount of care. There's no use looking after, the mental health bit if not having a job is affecting that mental health, because you don't have enough money to eat, for example. So we'll have an employment service that comes in and helps that young person as well. So we're looking at things in a holistic way. There's no use just assisting this one element of this kid's life when there's other things happening as well. And then for community awareness, there's me, and we also have a youth reference group where we were lucky enough, I'd say 2 years ago, met an amazing young woman here actually at this forum who sits in one of our youth reference groups and assists us about how we can make our service more accessible and welcome and better for young people who have any vision impairment issues or concerns. So to make an appointment at Headspace, it's really easy. All you need to do is call. You can pick up the phone, you as a parent, carer, as long as the young person's aware, like we can't physically force anyone to come in and access care, but it could be daunting for young people to call up on their own. So as a parent, carer, teacher, soccer coach, anyone can call and make an appointment for this young person as long as they're willing to come in. And they'll be given a date, and then they'll come in for an intake appointment. So in that intake appointment, they'll sit down for 40 minutes, and one of our clinicians will look at the scope of their life at the different domains and say, how are things at home? Are you struggling with drug and alcohol use? What's bringing you here today? How are your relationships? Like, what's worrying you? And that will assist us in painting an overall picture of the care for that young person. If they're appropriate to stay within our service, then we'll manage them internally. But if they're presenting, say for example, with a really severe eating disorder and they've come to see us and they haven't spoken to anyone else, we'll make sure we connect them with a service who can provide that long-term ongoing care. So we just won't leave them there on their own. We'll make sure we connect them to another service that's able to deliver that intensive care. And then if they stay within our service, they'll see those clinicians that are allocated to them, and the person that they see on that first appointment, that the young person can keep checking in on that person if they have any questions, or they can go to that original person if anything changes, and then we'll adapt their care plan to suit new situations or whatever it may be that's happening for them. So the stats are showing us that 1 in 4 young people are going to experience a mental health issue. So 1 in 4 people at the cinema, 1 in 4 young people at the shopping centre, at our schools, will experience a mental health issue. And out of those young people, because of stigma, a lot of them aren't going to get the care that they need or require. So I guess by having these open conversations around mental health, hopefully it'll assist us to reduce that stigma and get young people the help that they need. So in a nutshell, mental health, when you have good mental health, you've got your confidence and self-esteem is in a good place, and you can fully enjoy and appreciate making new relationships, meeting with people, your day-to-day life, your environment, and you're mentally healthy. You can also reach your potential and deal with life's challenges. So when your mental health isn't so good, some of these things that are, easy for some people may be difficult for others, So I think, and all of us in this room have mental health. Some days it's better than others, but we all do, depending on what's happening, if there's stress at work or stress in our relationships, or, bills have come or whatever it may be. I think it's just important to normalise those conversations around mental health with young people, that we all do experience good days, not so good days, and when the days are not so good, it's okay to talk to people about it. So with young people, I usually, when I go into schools, talk to them about things that are keeping them mentally well, so protective factors, and they're already doing things that they don't see, they don't put it together that it's actually assisting with their mental health. So things like physical, physical stuff like being parts of sport teams or playing computer games or doing things that make them feel good. So I think, it's really good with young people to be having these conversations about how we can be improving their mental well-being. A lot of people wait till all the way before the HSC, and then there's massive stress and anxiety, and all of a sudden everyone's clamouring around to get help and booking appointments. And I think we've got to go back to the early intervention, prevention stuff. What are we doing now? There are apps out there, like for example Smiling Mind, where you can be teaching mindfulness from kids from the age of 5 in an age-appropriate way of like breathing techniques, calming yourself down. You know, there's really important skills that these kids can take through all the way up into adulthood. And some schools are starting to teach them as well, these schools, and have these classes, which I think is really great. So I guess with young people, when talking to parents, we really encourage these domains, that with young people, you're encouraging them to exercise, and by exercise I mean they don't have to join the gym and run like 20 kilometres. It could be walking the dog around the block, like getting out into sunshine if they can. Eating well, seeking help if they need it, so trying to remove stigma around that. Being self-reflective, so we're encouraging our young people that, you know, about certain situations and how they could have done things differently, like encouraging conversation, creating a safe space for all sorts of conversations, so that if something did happen or come up, or your young person was having a hard time, that they would be confident enough to be like, Mum, Dad, Auntie, I don't feel like myself at the moment, you know. I think with young people, they don't have the language sometimes to be able to say, I don't feel like myself, or, you know, things don't feel so good at the moment. There's just so much embarrassment and stigma around mental health issues. But going into schools, I can tell you it's getting better. Like, the amount of young men now that put their hand up and answer questions and are engaging in these conversations is really great and positive, but we still have a really long way to go. Positive self-talk, so I really encourage that kind of resilience building to young people, that if they catch themselves out, and because we spend the most time we do with ourselves, and so if things are bad like in life already and then we're tearing ourselves down internally as well, we're not going to feel much better. So I think just encouraging young people, the way that they're framing things, like looking for evidence, you know, where is the evidence that nobody at that party likes you or wants you there? You know what I mean? Those kind of things, like starting to challenge, you know, challenge the way that they're thinking, you know. And a lot of this stuff happens in cognitive behavioural therapy with psychologists, where they start to question the young person and, you know, what, you know, where are you getting these ideas about this or that, like trying to encourage different ways of thinking. Goal setting is really important as well, and just really encouraging young people to stay connected, especially young people with mental health issues, like I mentioned before, especially with anxiety or depression, which we'll discuss a little further. They might withdraw, so from you as a family member or a carer, or from friends, like that could be a sign that something could be up. So with young people coming in, like some of these things will start, we see a lot of these things are starting to be affected. So sleeping gets affected with when people's mental health isn't so good. They're eating, you know, they're either eating too much or eating not enough. So there's some common things. You know, also the way that I said before, like the way that they're viewing themselves or talking about themselves, like in that light, if that shifts. But yeah, sleep and eat's really important, and also, yeah, just encouraging exercise is a core one as well, and getting into those healthy habits. Any questions or anything else you would add to that list that works for the young people you know? No? Okay. So this is an interesting one in schools. Like when I talk to young people, 50 million things come up. Like you know, things like the environment stress people out now. You know, they really think about it. There's some young people out there really thinking about things like, you know, how the environment's being impacted, about, you know, through, you know, all these discussion with climate, global warming. Also, you know, bullying. Also, you know, for example, you know, families may be breaking up, or changing schools, or stress with exams, or not knowing what to do in the future when they leave school. Or, for example, if a young person has a disability, like how's that going to impact them in the future? That could be something that's, you know, worrying them. But yeah, teenagers care a lot about what other teenagers and what peers think about them as well. Which could cause them a lot of distress, and relationships. And I think the thing with teenagers is a lot of things are happening to teenagers for the first time, you know, and I think that's why, like, when a relationship breakup happens as a teenager, you're not an adult and you can't look back and go, oh, there's going to be like another 10 or 15 of those make or breaks, and it's, you know, you're going to be okay, you're going to be resilient, you're going to bounce back. But when you're 13 or 14 and your girlfriend or boyfriend breaks up with you, it's the end of the world, because you at that time maybe thought it was going to be forever and you didn't know any different, you know. So I think that's the thing, is that, yeah, we're seeing a lot of young people who are having you know, these things happen to them for the first time that they don't feel confident talking maybe to their parents or carers about, might be a bit embarrassed, or and we try and guide them through it, so we can give them that toolkit, so then when the second breakup happens or the third breakup happens, they're like, okay, that's cool, I can do this, it's happened before. But with these, especially the younger ones, they can't see another way out at that time. So one of the common mental health issues that we're seeing with young people is depression, and this is probably depression and anxiety are the ones we hear, I guess, the most about in the media. So with us at Headspace Camperdown, like with the early intervention stuff, we'll be seeing a lot of anxiety, depression kind of related things, but then also within us, co-located in the same floor, is an early intervention in psychosis team. So that's for young people who are like on the other side. So we do the early intervention side of things, and then you've got the young people that are kind of suffering or having a hard time with the psychosis side of things. So we're able to, you know, if we aren't able to provide someone something because they're quite unwell, then we're able to refer over so the young person's not falling between the cracks. So with depression, I guess the main things, you know, that we see, and they vary from person to person, are the young person will be feeling bad, worthless, or guilty. That avoidance stuff that I said, the behaviour changes, don't feel like going out anymore, probably like going to the movies every week with their close friends, and all of a sudden like, oh, I don't want to go anymore. So you may see some behaviour changes, withdrawing from close family and friends, losing interest and pleasure in activities that they once enjoyed, tiredness, lack of energy, motivation, again eating changes that I said before, difficulty concentrating and making decisions. So it'll vary from person to person, but these are some of the common indicators that you may see, and some people get really good at hiding it as well. There are a lot of high functioning people that have depressive symptoms that, you know, hide it because, you know, they don't know what it is, or they're too embarrassed to say what it is. In terms of treatments, we will do the talking therapy with a psychologist, and the psychiatrist is there for further evaluation if that young person has not been functioning well for a while, and a lot of other things aren't working. Then we might look into getting further evaluation through a psychiatrist to see if there's anything else we can be doing or adding to be able to assist this young person. So yeah, I think that's definitely one to look out for in young people, and the changes of the behaviour, but also, like I said before, sometimes people are really good at hiding their symptoms. And sometimes parents are like, oh, well, what's the difference between like normal teen moodiness and a depressive episode, or a young person that might be feeling some depression or something like that? And I think, yeah, that's why it's good to consult a professional, because and just frame it as a chat. Our services look like youth services, they don't look medical. And I think it's just better to double check, and then if it is something, then cool, you've caught it in time and you can get assistance for it. And if it wasn't something, then that's fine, it's just moodiness, and then you can, you know, get on with it. But I think it's just better to double check, or maybe you can get some advice about how to manage that moodiness, or, you know, some of those other things. Anxiety is another big one that's affecting a lot of young people that we see at our service, really common. But yeah, it could look like persistent worrying and excessive fears that a young person might have, and they can't help it, like they just can't relax. Like no matter what they do, they can't relax. They might be staring up at the ceiling, can't sleep at night, they're worrying what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen in a month's time. You know, they just can't stop. For some people it maybe looks like excessive shyness. And young people sometimes with anxiety start avoiding challenging situations, so they don't want to do anything new. So they might be refusing to go to work experience. It's too much of the unknown, you know, I don't want to go. So they might start being quite socially isolated and withdrawn, so maybe sitting away from their friends at lunch or avoiding things and just going to the library. Or they might like the library, I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, you know, some people do socially isolate. Trouble concentrating and paying attention, and poor sleep's another thing that could be happening with anxiety as well. And sometimes anxiety and depression, sometimes they'll come together, sometimes there'll be a bit of this and a bit of that in one person, like it looks different from person to person. And then that's why it's important that if you do have an inkling or a gut feeling that this might be happening for a young person in your life, that you do seek that support, even if it gives you some guidance around what things you could be doing at home or in the classroom to be able to make things a bit easier for that young person. And the same again, like with treatments, like there'll be the talk therapy with the psychologist looking at the situations the young person's avoiding. You know, why are they having those feelings around, you know, those new experiences or those new changes or those fears, and just really flesh out how to challenge some of those. And like I mentioned before, like anyone can be a referrer to the service. We've tried to set it up as easy as possible. And our website is headspace.org.au if there's anything further that you need to look up. So all the things I mentioned, like anxiety, depression, there's stuff on there about self-harm, there's stuff on there about eating disorders, alcohol, drug use in young people. You can just go on there, and they're all free fact sheets that have been designed to make it easier and accessible for young people and their families to access, and it have common signs on there, common symptoms, ways to help that situation, and they're all on the website under resources on the headspace.org.au resources page. A lot of young people, I guess, worry, and a lot of families worry that if they come to our service, like, you know, what is going to happen with the information that they give to us. And I think that's a thing, in terms of privacy and confidentiality. What that young person stays in that room is private. Obviously, like a lot of other services, if that young person's, you know, at risk or at risk of harming themselves or harming someone else, like we have to do something about that. Like, you know, that's our job, to keep everyone safe. But other than that, young people come in and tell us all sorts of things all the time that they never told anyone before, and what they say stays private and confidential. And I think that's the thing. Sometimes young people are like, are you going to tell mum this? Are you going to tell dad this? Are you going to tell, you know, and it's just like, well, no, if you're not at risk of like hurting yourself or hurting someone else, it's kept private. And I think that building that trust in that community where young people know they can come and tell us things, whether it be about sexual health, whether it be about relationships or whatever, you know, the word gets around. And I think that's why young people come to us, because they know that it's a safe space to talk about things, and we will assist. That's the website I was talking about, so headspace.org.au. And you can find your closest Headspace on there. There's a section on there, I'm pretty sure you can put in your postcode or your suburb, and it lets you know where your closest Headspace site is. This is another good resource for young people, reachout.com. It isn't a service per se that you walk into, like a physical service, but it's a really youth-friendly website where young people can look up things like exam stress or breaking up in a relationship or anything kind of like bullying, and then look at tips on there or look at other young people's experiences about it. They also have regular forums on there that are facilitated by a worker, where young people can go on and ask workers anonymous questions around whatever the particular issue is, and they're quite get quite popular because young people get on and they feel anonymous and they can ask questions, and it's a worker, so it's a safe space. Kids Helpline, which we all know about, is a really important one. I think making our young people aware, you know, that these services exist, and that might be a little thing like having a fridge magnet, like if you can get your hands on one of those Kids Helpline fridge magnets or something, just having it on the fridge, so if they ever did need it, they could quickly sneak down the number while you were in the kitchen or somewhere else and then ring up if they needed to. Lifeline.org.au, and that's for all ages. Headspace also has an online platform called headspace.org.au, and we also encourage parents as well, if you've got a question or you're worried about your young person and you just want to double check, you can also just call up headspace or do online chat and just get some advice. Like, it's not a crisis service, but there's a whole floor of psychologists in Melbourne, and this is their role. That's what they do, the online element, and that's headspace. And often what will happen with that as well is young people or their families will call up for the first time because they might be unsure about how to access a headspace service, and then they'll link the parent and the young person up to their closest headspace through that way. So that's headspace, so you just put the E in front of the headspace. So we're seeing young people for all sorts of things. Like I said before, the issue that your young person comes in with, it's probably not the first time that we've heard, you know, of that situation. Like, we're not really shocked by anything because we hear and see a lot of things on an everyday basis. So, you know, please don't have any shame around any of the issues that you or your young person are coming into the service for. And that's our info here at Headspace Camperdown if you live around this area, but if not, I encourage you to look up the website and find the closest one to you. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, hi.
Making an inquiry. What about vision impaired students, for example, who also have autism, for example? Would they
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on the level of autism, because it is such a spectrum. So, yeah, because we're lucky, like at the Brain and Mind Centre, where we've got like a section of our team within the Brain and Mind Centre that works with young people with autism, and so if that was to happen, I think then they would get referred into that autism anxiety group. I think that's the thing. Yeah. 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 And I think that's a thing. Yeah. Because it depends, because sometimes people don't fully say how intensive the disability might be. And then it's hard for the young person if they're being asked questions in the session about the domains and they don't quite understand. It's hard to get that information, a snapshot of that info. But for anything to do with the autism-related stuff, I'd be looking up Dr. Adam Gastella at the Brain and Mind Centre. He's the go-to in terms of autism-related stuff at the Brain and Mind Centre. He does quite a lot of research around that, and I know he's running groups with teenagers there. So it's Gastella, so Guestella, Gastella. Or ring Headspace and ask for Adam Gastella, and they'll be able to Headspace Camperdown. Yeah, but with autism, he's that person, and if not, he will refer you to some, because specific care needs to be put into place for people with both autism and mental health issues. Yeah, but there is help. There is help. Yeah. 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 Gastella, and then they'll be able to refer you to his clinic. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, because with... I'm unsure, but I know that because within the Brain and Mind Centre so downstairs we've got a child behaviour clinic that's separate to us. Then you've got Adam Gustella doing the autism stuff. Then you've got us doing the early intervention mental health. There's lots of little pockets happening. But if you can't get to him there, he'll refer to you somewhere closer to your area where you can get help for that young person. Yep. No. Young people are coming in on their own. Some young people are referring themselves, coming in alone. Yep. Yep. 12 to 25. So with the little ones, like, we'll encourage parental stuff, like especially under 14, we'll encourage, you know, a role with the parents, obviously because they're so little, but there are 14-year-olds, you know, that are accessing the service. It depends on their maturity as well, and I think the GPs can make that call, because there are some young people that are like in foster care or residential care units, and, you know, they don't really have many other people to talk to.
My mum wanted me to write a book called To Be Continued, because there was times there where we weren't sure that it was going to continue for me. I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue. It started when I was 9 years old, this bubbling depression. That really continued until I was probably about 17. I definitely felt abnormal. I ended up going to the counsellor's office and just not going back to school. I felt this huge shame. I didn't have any words for what it was. All I knew was that every couple of months I would just break down, couldn't handle it, cry, lose my mind, not want to talk to anyone. And then it would sort of get a bit better, but it wasn't really better. It was just sort of a temporary fix along the way. My first experience at Headspace, the initial consultation with one of the youth workers was meant to go for probably 15 minutes, half an hour, to sort of see where I was at. I kept her there for an hour and 45 minutes. Pretty sure that went into a lunch break. She just sat there and listened and listened and listened. And it was all this stuff that was coming out. It was really, really good to get off my chest and talk about. The change for me was going from what's wrong to what can we do. And it was really empowering to feel like that. The smoothest rocks are the ones that have been crashed and dragged and dropped and thrown through rivers. It's the real gems that you end up appreciating what they've gone through. Yes, there's been a lot of difficulty that I've experienced, but at the same time, I've come out of it stronger. Creativity is something which I feel is vital to my well-being. Mandalas are a passive expression of emotion. You work from the middle out, and you build and build and build in this sort of circle. Whatever you want to put on the paper that can convey whatever you're feeling or thinking. Creations come from a place of pain quite often, and I channel that pain that I feel into things that I do. This place is somewhere which is such a peaceful place for me. It gives me so much freedom to do the things I love, be outside, be in nature, create things. All of this stuff that really invigorates me and makes me feel happy. Generally, there's this weird stoic mindset that men have where we think we got to tough it out and be strong for some reason. Strong is doing the thing that you're scared of, that is difficult, that is harder. The strength that comes from talking about it far outweighs the strength of trying to carry it alone. My story, I guess, is the fact that I am continuing, that I'm going forward in a way that is really positive, and that life is completely not where I thought it was going to be a few years ago, in the best way possible.
So yeah, that's an example of one of the videos that are available on the website by young people that have accessed Headspace and come through it. Alessandro is actually, the big anxiety festival's coming up in the city, and he does a lot of amazing work around awareness around suicide prevention and suicide awareness, and he'll be one of their guest speakers. So if mental health is something that you're wanting to know more about, the big anxiety festival coming up, I think in the next month or so, you can actually see him speaking live about his experiences and things like that. But I'd encourage for conversations around mental health with young people, I think if you role model that behaviour, it's going to make it easier with young people to talk. So Alessandro, I work closely with through the headspace advocacy work, and one of the things we often talk about with young people, it's easy to have these conversations in the car because you're not making face eye to eye contact. You're both facing the front of the road and you're going, and it's like it's much easier to talk when someone's not staring at you if you're talking about having a hard time. So those bits where you're dropping your kids off at school or picking them up or driving them somewhere, they're such opportunistic moments to be able to check in about the day and to also put yourself in it first and say, oh wow, like I feel like my mental health might be feeling a bit low today because I had this thing happen at work today. How's yours going? So if you start these conversations and you put yourself in it, and they're like, oh wow, like they see you as a safe person to have these conversations with, and you're starting to give them that language, this language that we don't usually talk about. So even with our friends as well. And there was this amazing campaign that came out, I don't know if you saw it, called Chat Laps by Beyond Blue, and it just had two mates in a car, driving in a car, just being like talking about, really blokey things, but really they were checking in with each other to see how each other was going, and I think Chat Laps is, just think about that the car is such an opportunistic moment, picking them up from school or dropping them off or driving them to sport and just having a little chat and a little check-in. And so if they need to bring something up, they'll be like, oh, I'll bring it up in the car next time when we're both facing the road and we're not, so yeah, just creating a safe space and, giving them the language around talking about how they're feeling, because yeah, I don't think, that's something we're not really taught to talk about feelings at school, So if you're role modelling that as a good parent, a good carer, a good teacher, then chances are as they get older, they'll be able to do that in relationships for themselves, for their kids, if they decide to have any. So there'll be some fact sheets. Dr. Blake Hamilton, who'll be on the panel later, has brought some stuff from Headspace. He's one of our clinical psychologists at Headspace Camperdown, so he'll have some resources which hopefully he'll put over there if you want to grab any. But thank you for your time today, and I hope you get a lot out of the day, and good health to everyone and your kids. Thank you.